There are moments in life that split everything into before and after. I know that now. I didn't know it the Tuesday morning I backed my truck out of the driveway to do what I thought was the simplest favor in the world. My son called me at 8:15. I was already on my second cup of coffee, watching the birds at the feeder my wife Martha planted before she passed. Daniel's voice had that rushed, distracted quality it always gets when he's running late for a meeting. Dad, I completely forgot. My car's been at Ray's since Monday morning. Oil change, tire rotation, the whole thing. I can't get away until after 3, and Ray closes at noon on Tuesdays. Any chance you could swing by and grab it? I told him, of course. That's what fathers do. Ray's auto shop has been on the corner of Clemens and 5th Street for 32 years. Ray Kowalski and I go back even further than that. We coached Little League together in the 90s. He gave Daniel his first summer job sweeping the garage floor. When Martha got sick, Ray showed up at our door with a casserole and didn't say a word, just handed it to me and squeezed my shoulder. There are people in your life who become part of the landscape, and Ray is one of mine. I pulled into the lot at 10:45. Ray's truck was out front. The bay doors were open, the smell of motor oil and rubber mixing with the autumn air. I went inside and found Ray at the front counter, but he wasn't doing paperwork. He was just standing there. And when he looked up at me, something in his face was wrong. Not the face of a man who was busy, the face of a man who had been waiting. Harold, he said, and he said it quietly. The way you say someone's name when what comes next is going to be hard. I asked him what was wrong. He looked past me through the window at the empty lot. Then he came around the counter and put his hand on my arm and said, "Come back here with me. I need to show you something before you take that car." I followed him to the back office, the little room with the metal desk and the coffee maker that's older than both of us. He closed the door. He reached into the top drawer of his desk and set a cell phone down in front of me. Small, cheap, the kind with a prepaid SIM that you can buy at a gas station for $29. "I found that under the front seat of Nicole's car," he said. I looked at him. Nicole's car? She brought it in yesterday, same time as Daniel's. Wanted her SUV serviced before the weekend. She left both keys and asked me to call Daniel when they were ready. He paused. But before she left, she sat in the parking lot for about 20 minutes. I happened to walk out to the supply shed and I could hear her. She was on this phone. He tapped it with one finger. Not her regular phone. This one. She had it in her jacket pocket. I asked him what he heard. Ray sat down slowly. She said, "And I'm telling you exactly what I heard." She said, "The account will be clear by Friday. After that, I'm gone and the kids won't be a problem." The room went very still. I could hear the compressor running out in the bay. I could hear a car passing on Clemens Street. I could not hear my own heartbeat, but I could feel it somewhere high in my chest, pushing too hard. "The kids won't be a problem," I repeated. Ray nodded. "Emma is 8 years old. She has Martha's eyes and Daniel's stubborn streak, and she has been the reason I get out of bed on the mornings when getting out of bed feels impossible. Tyler just turned 5 in September. He still calls me Grandpa Harold, with the full 2 words every single time. Never shortens it, and I have never once asked him to stop. I picked up the phone. It was locked. Ray said he hadn't touched it except to put it in the drawer. He found it when he was vacuuming the interior before he pulled the car around. He said he almost didn't take it, almost left it on the seat, but something made him stop. I asked him if Nicole knew he had it. He shook his head. She never came back inside after she made that call. Just drove away in Daniel's car. Said she'd pick up her SUV this weekend. I stood there looking at that phone for a long time. I thought about Nicole's face at Christmas last year, laughing at something Daniel said. I thought about how she braided Emma's hair before the school recital. I thought about what kind of person smiles and braids hair and then sits in a parking lot making calls on a secret phone about money clearing and kids not being a problem. I thanked Ray. I told him not to say anything to anyone yet. He looked at me with the same steady eyes that have looked at me across a Little League dugout for 30 years, and he said, "Whatever you need, Harold. You call me." I drove Daniel's car home and called my son before I even got out of the driveway. He answered on the second ring, still at work, still rushed. I told him I needed him to listen to me carefully and not react until I finished talking. There was a pause. Daniel has always known the difference between my regular voice and the voice I used when something was truly wrong. He used to hear it maybe twice a year when he was growing up. He knew it now. I told him everything Ray told me. I told him slowly and clearly, the same way I used to explain the infield fly rule to 8-year-olds, one fact at a time. The silence on his end lasted long enough that I said his name. "I'm here," he said. His voice had changed completely. All the rushing was gone. He left work. He told his assistant he had a family emergency, which was not a lie. He was at my house in 22 minutes, still in his dress shirt, and when he walked through the door, his face looked like a man who had been hit somewhere he wasn't expecting and was still deciding whether to fall. We sat at my kitchen table. I set the phone between us. He said, "She's been distant for months." I told myself it was stress. She said work was hard. I asked him about the account Nicole mentioned, the one that would be clear by Friday. He opened his banking app right there at my table. His face went white so fast I thought he was going to pass out. "Dad," he said. He turned the phone so I could see. Their joint savings account, the account they had been putting money into for 6 years, the one earmarked for the kids' college, for the house they were planning to buy, for the life they were building together, had a balance of $412. 18 months ago it had held $63,000. He scrolled through the transfer history. $1,200 here, $800 there. Transfers to an account I didn't recognize, made over and over and over again, stretching back to the previous spring. Small enough amounts that if you weren't looking closely, if you trusted the person who had access to the account, you might not notice until it was almost too late. It was almost too late. Daniel's hands were shaking. Not from anger. Not yet. From the particular kind of shock that comes when you realize the ground you thought was solid has been hollow the whole time. I put my hand on his arm. I told him we needed to think clearly. I told him the most important thing, the only thing that mattered right now, was Emma and Tyler. Where were they? He checked his watch. School pickup was at 3:15. It was 1:40. He said Nicole had been working from home that afternoon. She was supposed to pick them up. I told him he needed to call his lawyer before he called Nicole. He looked at me like he wanted to argue, and then he nodded, because he understood what I was telling him. If Nicole knew that we knew, and if she had already made whatever arrangements she had been quietly making for months, there was no predicting what she would do. The phone in Ray's drawer was evidence of a plan. Plans that are interrupted don't disappear. They accelerate. He called his lawyer, a woman named Patricia, who had handled his business contracts for years. She listened to the full story and told him not to touch the joint account, not to confront Nicole, and to get the children and bring them somewhere safe first. She said she was calling a colleague who handled family law and she'd have someone call him within the hour. Then she said something that hit me harder than anything else that day. She said that the language Ray overheard the kids won't be a problem, combined with the financial drain and a burner phone indicated pre-planned relocation. She said in her experience that phrase did not mean what a frightened father hoped it meant. It meant the children had been factored into a plan, and their role in that plan was to come along. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. We drove to the school separately. I pulled into the parent pickup line at 2:50, early enough to be near the front. Daniel parked down the block where Nicole wouldn't see his car if she arrived first. The family law attorney had already called and advised him to be present at pickup, to take the children, to say nothing inflammatory and give nothing away. I sat in that line watching the school doors, and I thought about Martha. I thought about what she would have done. Martha was the gentlest person I have ever known, but she had a spine made of something harder than I'll ever understand. And when it came to her family, to her son, to the grandchildren she adored, there was no version of events in which she would have sat quietly. I felt her with me that afternoon in a way I cannot explain and do not try to. The doors opened at 3:15. Emma came out first, backpack bouncing, looking around for a familiar face. Her face opened up when she saw my truck. She ran to me with the full-body enthusiasm that only children and golden retrievers can manage, and I held on longer than usual. She didn't seem to notice. Tyler was right behind her, his sneaker untied as always. And he said, "Grandpa Harold," with the full 2 words like he always does. And I had to breathe very carefully for a moment. I got them into my truck. I texted Daniel, "I have them." He was there in 60 seconds. And the look on his face when he saw his children buckled into my back seat was the look of a man who has just been pulled back from a very high edge. Nicole arrived at 3:22. I watched in my rearview mirror as she pulled into the lot, parked, and went to the door. She spoke to one of the teachers. I could see from a distance the moment she understood the children were already gone. She pulled out her phone. Daniel's phone rang. He was sitting in the passenger seat of my truck. He looked at the screen and then at me. I told him to answer it. I told him to stay calm and tell her I picked the kids up early because we had plans for ice cream. Nothing more, he answered. I watched his face as he spoke. He was better than I expected. His voice was steady. He said the kids were with him and his dad, that we'd grabbed them early, that everything was fine. Nicole's voice through the phone was controlled, but there was something tight underneath it, something that sounded like someone recalculating. She said she'd see them at home. Daniel said, "Sure." He ended the call and sat quietly for a moment. I asked the kids if they wanted ice cream. Tyler said yes before I finished the sentence. We went to Scoops on Meridian, the place we'd been going since Daniel was their age. We sat in a booth and I watched my grandchildren eat ice cream and argue about whether strawberry was better than chocolate, and I kept my face very still so they wouldn't see what was underneath it. While the kids were distracted, the family law attorney called Daniel. She had filed for an emergency custody order. She told him that, based on the financial evidence and the witness account from Ray, a judge had granted a temporary order giving Daniel sole physical custody pending a full hearing. She said the police would be involved in the service of that order and advised Daniel to keep the children with him that night. We went back to my house. I called Ray and told him to keep Nicole's SUV and not release it until he heard from me. Ray said he understood. He asked if the kids were safe. I told him yes. He said, "Good. That's the only thing that matters." Daniel called his neighbor, a young woman who sometimes watched the kids, and asked her to pack overnight bags from his house and bring them to me. He gave her a list. He told her Nicole might be home and to say she was just grabbing some things the kids needed for a sleepover at Grandpa's. The neighbor, bless her, asked no questions. Nicole called 3 more times that evening. Daniel answered twice and kept it brief. The third time, he let it go to voicemail. The message she left was the thing that stayed with me longest. She didn't sound panicked. She didn't sound guilty. She sounded frustrated, the way someone sounds when a plan they have been careful with has developed an unexpected snag. She said she thought it would be better for everyone if they talked, just the two of them, before things got complicated. She said she had been meaning to have a conversation with Daniel for a while. She said there were things he didn't understand about her situation. She did not ask about the children. In 32 years of marriage to Martha, there was not a single night we spent apart where she did not ask about our son first. Not once. Nicole did not ask about her children. Daniel played me the voicemail, and then he set his phone face down on my kitchen table, and he didn't pick it up again for a long time. The order was served the following morning. The officer told Daniel afterward that when Nicole answered the door and read the document, she became very still in the way that people become still when they realize the window they were watching has just closed. She said almost nothing. She asked for the name of the filing attorney. She closed the door. Within the hour, a man I did not know arrived at Nicole's address in a car with out-of-state plates. He sat in front of the house for 40 minutes and then drove away. The officer who had served the order happened to still be on the street finishing paperwork. He ran the plates. The car was registered to an address in Phoenix, Arizona. Patricia, the attorney, brought that information to the family law judge the next morning. What came out over the following 2 weeks in depositions and financial subpoenas was a story that had been running quietly underneath the surface of my son's life for nearly 2 years. Nicole had been in a relationship with a man in Phoenix. She had been transferring money into a joint account she held with him. She had applied for housing in Arizona. She had researched school districts. She had, at some point in the previous spring, decided that she was done with her life in this city, done with my son, and she had been dismantling everything with the patience and invisibility of someone who believed she would never be caught. The plan, as best as the attorneys could reconstruct it, had been to wait until the account was fully drained, take the children for what Daniel would believe was a weekend trip to see her cousin in Cincinnati, and not come back. Emma and Tyler, her own children, packed up like luggage and moved across the country without a father, without a grandfather, without the school they knew, and the neighborhood they rode bikes in, and the ice cream place on Meridian, where the woman behind the counter knows their orders by heart. I sat with that for a long time. I am not a man who cries easily. I am 67 years old, and I was raised by a man who thought feelings were something you acknowledged briefly and then got on with things. But I sat in my living room the night after the depositions, with the house quiet and Emma and Tyler asleep down the hall, and I cried in a way I had not cried since the day I lost Martha. Not from sadness, exactly. From the particular grief that comes when you realize how close you came to something you can barely stand to imagine. A burner phone under a car seat. Ray deciding to pick it up instead of leaving it. Me getting a phone call at 8:15 on a Tuesday morning asking if I could do a favor. That's all that stood between my grandchildren and a life I would never have been able to find them in. Nicole's attorney negotiated a plea on the financial fraud charges. She received probation and was ordered to repay every dollar. The family court judge granted Daniel primary custody with supervised visitation, citing documented evidence of planned custodial interference. The man in Phoenix was never charged with anything. He simply ceased to appear. The night after the final court date, Daniel and I sat on my back porch the way we used to sit when he was in high school and had something on his mind. He didn't say much. He had a glass of sweet tea and he looked out at the yard, and after a while he said, "I keep thinking about all the times I almost noticed. There were signs, Dad. I just didn't want to see them." I told him that's not weakness. I told him that's what it means to love someone. You extend grace. You give benefit of the doubt. You assume the best because you cannot imagine the alternative. He nodded slowly. I told him the thing that mattered now was the same thing that always matters. Emma and Tyler, asleep inside. The fact of them, healthy and safe and arguing about strawberry versus chocolate, completely unaware of how differently this story could have ended. He said, "They love you, you know. You're the best thing in their week." I didn't say anything for a moment. There are things that are too full for words, and that was one of them. After a while, I said that I thought Martha was watching, that I thought she had something to do with Ray deciding to vacuum that car the way he did, that I thought sometimes the people we lose don't go as far as we think. Daniel smiled, the first real smile I had seen from him in 2 weeks. He said, "Mom always said you were a worrier. Maybe she sent you an easy day so you'd be available." I laughed. It felt good to laugh. The following Saturday, Emma asked me to teach her to play gin rummy. We sat at the same kitchen table where Daniel and I had looked at the banking app and watched everything fall apart, and I dealt the cards and explained the rules 3 times because she kept changing the strategy mid-hand, and Tyler sat between us eating crackers and trying to see everyone's cards. And the light came through the window, the way light does in autumn, when the leaves have turned and the afternoon has gone golden. I thought about ordinary days. I thought about how ordinary days are not ordinary at all. I thought about how every single morning that I wake up and those 2 kids are safe in the world is a morning worth being awake for. There are people who will tell you that family is everything. I have heard it my whole life, and I have believed it in the abstract way that you believe things you haven't had to prove yet. I know what it means now. Not in the abstract. In the specific, particular, undeniable way that you know things after they have been tested. I know what it means to almost lose what you cannot afford to lose. And I know what it means to have someone in your life, a friend of 30 years, a man with grease under his fingernails and a casserole on your doorstep when your wife is sick, who picks up a phone he could have left on a car seat and decides, without knowing why, that something isn't right. Ray came to Tyler's birthday party in October. He sat in my backyard and ate cake and watched Tyler run circles around the yard with Emma chasing him, and at some point he found me by the fence and stood next to me, and we watched the kids the way old men watch children when they understand what they're really looking at. I told him he would never know what he did for this family. He was quiet for a moment, then he said, "I just picked up a phone, Harold." I said, "Yeah, that's exactly what you did." He nodded and we watched the kids run, and neither of us said anything else, because there wasn't anything else that needed to be said. Sometimes the biggest things in your life come disguised as the smallest moments. A phone call at 8:15, a favor, a drive across town. Sometimes the person standing between your family and something you cannot recover from is a friend who picked up a phone he found under a car seat and decided it mattered. I am 67 years old. I have lost a wife I adored. I have buried friends. I have sat with grief that I thought would take me under. I know something about what it means to be standing on the far side of something terrible and to understand, in your bones, what you still have. Every Tuesday morning I go to Scoops on Meridian. Emma gets strawberry. Tyler gets chocolate with sprinkles. Always sprinkles. I get a coffee and I sit across from them and I watch them argue and laugh and make a mess of the table. It is, without question, the best part of my week. And I never once take it for granted.